Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Q&A. We are on Sunday night, and we have just wrapped up NFL Combine week in the NFL landscape of the offseason here, and there is no shortage of information, news, and rumblings to talk about. We're going to talk about the rumblings out of Indy that we believe. We're going to break it all down here, and to do that with me, my good buddy, Sean Gurley, Big G. Big G, welcome back to the Steelers Q&A, man. How you doing?
Man, what's happening, best man? Glad to be back in the building, man. Get to operate right after the combine, man. And, you know, got that black book, bro. Got that black book. Got some notes.
This is that prime time. This is that prime time to be on a live show and get the feedback of the fans who I'm sure have been listening to all of the rumblings on their own and are ready to talk Steelers and everything going on this offseason. And Sean, I think you and I can both agree that there are a lot of things happening this offseason for the Steelers. There's a lot of behind the scenes workings that we may not know the full picture, but the Steelers are trying to build a contender in 2024, and we're going to see how they're going to do it. I think you've got some good tidbits for us here. People in the comments, go ahead and put your questions in and your comments on what we're going to talk about tonight, but really it's the rumblings. So Big G, where do we start with all these Indy rumblings? Where do we start, man?
So I just need to make a statement that I've been saying on every channel that I've been on. I just got off a podcast earlier, and you're going to hear me say this all the way through the draft. In my opinion, based on what I saw in the combine, based on what I heard about in the combine, and what I know is coming as far as pro days are concerned, this is the deepest draft that'll be for the next 3 to 5 years. There is legitimately 50 to 55 players who have first-round NFL draft grades. That could. So if you have 32 guys that can go in the first, there's at least half of the second that are first-round NFL players. So that statement alone is letting you know that the depth and the quality of the players that's in this year's 2024 draft is nothing like you've seen in a long time.
Does it drop off pretty quick after that, in your opinion, or is it pretty solid?
No. I would, in my opinion, based on my evaluation, what I know, the people that I know that was actually there attending the combine and all whatnot, I think that you have probably 75 to 90 guys that could be day one starters, and you probably have another 40 to 50 guys after that that could start for at least through one contract, possibly two.
Wow. Yeah. And it's right now, then it's just about who gets who where then, because you're going to have some contributors right away. And so I guess what you would say then is that the Steelers specifically have an opportunity to get better in a hurry through this draft class.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this, I need to say this too. This is not a draft that you reach for a guy unless you absolutely know that he's the one.
Yeah.
Do not reach. Steeler fans, we shouldn't be reaching unless we know this is the one.
Yeah. No Artie Burns situations this year, right? None of that. We're locked. Right. None of that. We're locked in the corner and our dude is gone. We still got to get one. Get the next guy up on our board. Yeah. That's what I've been saying too, is like the Steelers could go 5 different directions in the first round and it wouldn't surprise me. And you probably couldn't complain about it either, because they could go offensive tackle. There's going to be offensive tackles on the board at 20 that are going to be starting caliber offensive tackles. They could go center. There's going to be centers on the board at 20 that you could go get. There's going to be centers on the board at 51 that you could go get. They could go wide receiver. They could go corner. There's a lot of different ways that they could go early in this draft, and it wouldn't and shouldn't surprise you if you are a Steelers fan at this point. And my biggest takeaway so far is that, like, about this time, the last few years, I've been like, you know what? They're locked into said position, whatever it is. I can't tell you that they're locked in on a position yet, which is kind of crazy. Maybe things are changing in Pittsburgh with Omar Khan at GM. We were talking backstage a little bit about that. So, hey, give us a little bit of tidbits that you've been hearing at the combine and some of the rumblings there that you are very intrigued by. Let's start with the one everybody wants to talk about, and it's the Justin Fields rumblings to Pittsburgh. Is that real? Is that real, Big G?
And what I know, and based on the sources that I know and are hearing, it's absolutely real. The issue is going to be the compensation, and will a couple of other teams decide to go all the way out on Justin Fields? From what I understand, one team is for sure out. So there's only 2 teams remaining that possibly going to take a landing spot for Justin. But then the question becomes the compensation, if that's the case. Because there's a lot of quarterbacks that showed promise at the NFL draft that a lot of teams are looking at, and they're saying, okay, we're out on trading for Fields. So it's coming down to 1 or 2 teams. So in my opinion, 75%, it's a real deal. It's a real deal.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is that like you're saying, because there's not a lot of teams in on him, that price just keeps falling by the day. Yep. I mean, by the day, Big G, it's falling because, I mean, I think the Bears, about 2 weeks ago, they were like, we're not walking out of Indy without a deal for this guy. He's going to be a hot commodity. There's going to be guys, teams pounding the table for Justin Fields, and it just didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And I mean, some of us have been looking at this market and thinking ahead, and like to me, the Atlanta Falcons rumors, that just doesn't make sense for a brand new coach, brand new GM with a roster that is kind of ready to put aside the project at quarterback and get a real deal at quarterback. That's why I think
in a weak division.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I think trading up in the draft for one of those top 3 guys or Kirk Cousins, somebody like that would be their primary goal this offseason. So that to me eliminates them, whether that's reported or not. But I think, what is it? Steelers, Raiders right now are kind of the 2 teams that are in there. Maybe the Vikings. That's been kind of put out there too, but that would be tough in an intra-division trade. That's tough to see happening. So there's a lot of people in the comments that are not going to love Fields. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are going to love him. He's a polarizing player for all of those reasons. But I think there's also been some rumblings about maybe Deontay Johnson being on the trade block for the Steelers. How do you see that going?
I think that's even more of a scenario from what I'm hearing than Justin Fields' trade. I think the Deontay Johnson's days at Pittsburgh are numbered based on what's coming in as far as Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator, based on him wanting big body receivers that can block, run routes, who are specialists and being able to get open. He just doesn't fit the scheme. And Deontay is like, he's not only is he doesn't fit the scheme, he doesn't necessarily want to be the number 2 guy in a system. He wants to be a guy that's going to get his catches so that way he can drive his value up when it comes to contract talks. So because of that, I would not be shocked as the first Steeler out of the door, once the league year starts, like officially you can start talking on the 13th, but by the 15th of this month, which is like 10 days away, that if he's one of the first guys out of the door as far as a trade.
Yeah, it's coming up quick too. You kind of forget about it, like the combine happened, and so you're kind of draft oriented as far as the mindset goes. But man, free agency and trading time is upon us, man. I mean, we've had blockbuster trades go down before this too in previous years. So you think about Matthew Stafford and things like that. So things can happen anytime now. So stay tuned to the news. Staying on the Deontay Johnson thing, what's the interest like out there? I would say that there's probably pretty good interest because people see his skill set, where this is the type of guy who in kind of a wide open offense, maybe a spread passing game, is the kind of guy you really like. I think he is on par with some of the route runners that we see coming out in this draft class. Maybe even better than the guys like Ladd McConkey or Ricky Pearsall, guys that are getting a lot of hype for their route running ability. DJ's up there with the best of those. He's going to fit somewhere, right? Even if he doesn't fit in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I'm hearing is that he's also willing to not just play the Y position, but play the E position. And that's, for terminology to people that don't really watch football, that is called the slot, which means they can move. He makes the formation unbalanced. So he can play on either side. And so I'm hearing that a lot of teams are very interested in the services by either playing the Y or playing that slot guy, But once again, it comes down to value and how much you're willing to trade for a particular player. To me, as far as a fan, if you give me a second rounder, he's off the books. Yeah. He's off the books for me,
Well, and I think he'd be attractive contractually as well to another team because you get a guy who's locked in for another year, who's going to be absolutely motivated to play, to just play as hard as he can to get that next contract, right? And he's only going to cost you what, $17 million next year, something like that.
Cheap.
I mean, yeah, for a wide receiver 2, even these days, that's decent money. That's a good deal for a team. So that I think there's going to be a market for him if the Steelers do want to go that way. This is a kind of a follow-up question to that in the process of our conversation here. So when we're talking free agency, this is a good question to me because Afton asks, how much do you think free agency will change draft priorities? To me, the Steelers really address all of their team needs in free agency in some form or fashion. Now, that may be a couple of depth pieces as opposed to a day one you're coming in to start for our team. But they're going to address every single one of these holes on the team in free agency in some form or fashion. So I think that really does open the Steelers up to BPA, the good old BPA, best player available in the draft, maybe this year more than any other in recent memory. Do you concur with that thought process? Do you have a different idea about that?
I think you're spot on, bro. And the reason why I know it more than anything is because we know, because we follow football all the time, and a lot of our listeners know that, there was an increase as far as the monies and dollars available for teams this year to be able to do things free agents. But you have seen more and more teams just start cooking the books, cutting guys left and right, because they're trying to free up maximum cap space so that they can go big game hunting. Well, once they cut, then now, hey, there's guys available. So, there's like a mirror image. You look at one chart that's got the free agent, one chart that's got the draft players available, and then it's meshing dollars. So that's where we're at. And so I think that's where Omar Khan actually specializes in. He can push those two things together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Omar Khan to me is we saw a taste, Big G, in year one. Yeah. And we're about ready for the full entourage of the experience of Omar Khan. And I'm ready for it. I really am. So I think when you talk about, the Steelers and really the NFL in general right now, there's a race on, and it's different than maybe we've seen in the last maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years since the heyday of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And that race is, it doesn't matter what Kansas City has around them. They've got Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter who's on that offense. They've got Patrick Mahomes. And if you don't have Patrick Mahomes, you better have a roster of Marvel superheroes in Endgame ready to take the field against Patrick McThanos. I mean,
Patrick McThanos. Wow. I mean,
he is inevitable as they come, and you better have a roster ready to deal with that. And so the race is on. And when you spike the cap $30 million, these teams are going to go nuts this offseason in adding talent. And so I think draft picks, like going back to Deontay Johnson, a second round pick, that to me, if you're let's just throw it out there, a team like the Buffalo Bills, who they seem to have Stephon Diggs and a bunch of pieces, a bunch of guys. Why wouldn't you send that second round pick over for Deontay Johnson, a guy who's a known commodity for what he does on the field, could make life easy for Josh Allen, to where he's like, okay, if Diggs isn't there, I know this route runner guy, he's going to be open. So let me just put the ball on him. That's just an example. I'm not saying he'd be a fit there or whatever, but just like an example of a contending team. So to me, it's like, if you want to move somebody, you probably can this offseason in order to get better. So let's transition into a little bit of draft talk here. And let's start with Brian Brown's question. What position are the Steelers taking first? If you had to guess right now, what position are they taking? I think I know where you're going to go with this.
Man, listen. So let me, this is some breaking news, and this is legit. This is legit breaking news. When I am telling you that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in love with a certain player at a certain position that was at the combine and performed this weekend, that is legit, right?
Okay.
I know
Take
what
notes.
I know what our positions of needs are. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I know we need a right tackle. I know we need a cornerback that's opposite of Joey Porter Jr. I know we need a center. I know we do. And there's guys across the board who I got in my book that you better believe that I know, that I done circled it because based on what they did and their film study, oh yeah. But there's a certain guy, he's a WR, which is crazy to say that the Steelers would go after a WR in the first round. But Pittsburgh is fanatic about Romeo Nduzie, wide receiver, University of Washington. That is legit rumblings. I had feet on the ground. They told me what happened. And I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. There's no freaking way that we would go after Romeo Nduzie. You know, considering there's guys that I love, like Peyton Wilson, like Mims, who ran a 5 flat today at 340 pounds at tackle. I mean, there's guys that Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota. There's guys that I'm like, man. But man, when I'm telling you they are talking crazy about Romeo Nduzie, it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. It came out in Indy. What I heard, you know.
Yeah. He was absolutely thrilling teams across the board. Even the national media was all over that. But to have the Steelers in that mix, and they met with basically every first round prospective wide receiver there, which to me, that's like if you compare that to the fringe quarterbacks, they didn't meet with any of those guys. And so to me, that sounds like, to me, that's pretty clear. They're not going quarterback in this draft class. But they are interested in the wide receivers, and this was the place to see those guys because they were all there. At the Senior Bowl, you get a couple of these guys, but they were all there in Indy. And it is pretty incredible. And when you talk about what the Steelers' biggest move this offseason was, where was it? It was offensive coordinator, right? It was offensive coordinator. And you're talking about a roster that was built for a completely different system, ideology of offense, and that is all changing. And when the Tennessee Titans were playing to their potential, they were as tough and physical as anybody. And who's tougher and physical on the outside than Rome Odunze? I mean, AJ Brown was a tough dude in Tennessee. Rome Odunze kind of fits that mold. I know they're a different body type, but physical, big receiver, can do anything you want. It makes a ton of sense. It really does. And I know there's going to be a section of Steelers Nation that is like, well, we needed a center. We needed a corner. We needed an offensive tackle more than we needed a wide receiver. But what you're saying makes so much sense too. There's a lot of these guys. Like you don't have to lock yourself into an offensive tackle in round 1 because there's going to be guys in round 2. Not everybody's going to go in the top 32 picks, especially when you've got all this talent everywhere else. So there's going to be guys available. You just got to play your cards right and play the draft right.
Well, I'm going to tell you something else I think is going to happen too, bro. I think that you're going to see more trades this draft than you've probably seen in a long time because guys are going to pencil in people that they want. And you know what drives trades. I mean, at least I know you know. You know, I hope our listeners will know this too. Runs at positions. Yes. And I think you're going to see position runs like you've never seen before in NFL draft. Like you're going to see, once they figure this quarterback thing out with those top 5 or 6 picks, dudes are going to have people penciled it right at the top of their board, and it's going to be runs, wide receiver runs, cornerback runs, tackle runs. So when you got your guy and you want this guy, they're going to trade up to get him. They're going to trade up to get him, bro. So
I would not be surprised if we see it happen 2 years in a row under Omar Khan, where you're moving off of the pick that you originally had up for the guy that you want. And there's going to be other guys in that conversation too. Quinion Mitchell, maybe an offensive tackle. Talisi Fuaga was incredible at the combine.
Oh man, his on field was unbelievable, bro.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I don't. And the shuttles, the things that matter for those guys, the 10-yard split. I mean, this guy can get out in space too. There's a lot of those guys too. So again, don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I mean, they have so many options, and those are guys that I wouldn't be surprised if any one of those guys is a target for the Steelers to trade up and go get. Hey, let's do this real quick. Let's take our break on the audio side. If you're listening live, we're not going anywhere. We're staying put. Big G, Jeremy Betts here with you. We're going to keep talking Steelers and the combine rumblings that we are privy to and that you are privy to through all of the different sources that we all have. Stay tuned. The Steelers Q&A will be right back. All right, we're back here on the Steelers Sunday night Q&A. Jeremy Betts, Big G here with you, and we got a lot to talk about. Still, we're halfway through this show, and we ain't even touched all the rumors at the Combine. Let's get to some questions here, Big G, before we hit on some other rumblings. But Eric Parker asks a great question. Do the Steelers trade down? We just talked about trading up. Is there a chance where, hey, nobody took the bait on the Steelers trade moves to move up for somebody? They're very comfortable with 5-6 guys that they could still take when 20 comes around. Is this the year we might see a trade back with all the depth?
I think absolutely they could, especially if they're able to get draft capital in the second and or the third round.
Yeah.
Because like I said, the depth of players that's available from 1 through about 70. So if Pittsburgh trades back 3 or 4 spots, able to pick up an extra second-round draft pick, absolutely, man. It makes all the sense in the world.
It especially makes sense if the Steelers end up sending a pick over for Justin Fields, because then you recoup a first and a third, or you recoup a third-round pick, maybe a second-round pick, something like that, whatever you would have to give up. But, I mean, man, it's going back just real briefly to the Fields, they might be able to send one of their 4th-round picks over by the time this is all said and done. We'll see. Hey, that might be a little cheap.
See. Absolutely.
Yeah. So a good question there from Eric. I would say it's definitely on the table. And I would say this, Steeler fans, just mark it down. Go ahead and get used to it. Omar Khan is not going to be predictable when it comes to how he handles business, at least not for the first few years while Mike Tomlin and company are itching for a championship. And I think you mentioned off screen before we started recording that Omar Khan's got the green light. I believe that 100% that he's going to go do what he needs to do. I think they trust him to figure out the contractual side of everything. And I do too. So they're like, just give me players. Mike Tomlin's like, just give me my players to make this roster work. And we trust you to figure it out contractually.
Well, that was Khan's statement. If you go back to his press conference, he said his number one responsibility is making the 53-man roster as good as it possibly could be. That was his statement. And he said, bringing in players at positions is irrelevant. And in our mind, we're saying, okay, well, they already have an established guy here, or an established guy here, and an established guy here. Omar Khan's like, that stuff don't matter. I have to make this 53-man roster as best as it possibly can be. So that's why I'm like, man, there's no telling what the Khan man going to do. No telling.
Yeah, absolutely. The con artist is ready to roll. He really is.
Yeah.
Okay, Big G, we got a super chat, and it's a good one. All right, it's a really good one. It's from there it is. It's from our boy Tate. He's on you, man. He's getting on you. $4.99 from Tate. Thanks, Tate. But man, tell homie Big G stop butchering names. It's Rome, not Romeo. He's got you, man. What's going on?
I know some people that know him personally, and they call him Romeo all day and night. But his real birth name is Rome. But I know people that know him, and they call him Romeo.
That's
so
that nickname, right?
Yeah. Facts.
Hey,
think about it. What do we call JPJ? What do we call KP8?
Yeah.
So
what do we call Sean Gurley, right?
Yeah, that's what we call
Big G.
if he becomes a Steeler, they're gonna be calling him Romeo. Just get used to it.
Believe it. Absolutely. Hey, Tate, thanks for hopping in the chat, man. Thanks for listening in. It's a lot of fun to have you in here. We've got another question here from John S. More likely, Steelers draft a quarterback or Steelers don't draft a center in the first 3 rounds. That's tough.
Ooh. Wow.
Let me go ahead and answer this one. I think it's more likely that the Steelers draft a quarterback, but I think that quarterback gets drafted in the 6th or 7th round. That's my prediction on this. I don't think they're taking one early. I think if Joe Milton's sitting there in the 6th round, that they might take a swing at that for their fourth quarterback, third quarterback, whatever you want, to kind of be that practice squad guy that simulates Lamar Jackson and some of the athletic quarterbacks, and then a project that maybe you can groom into something. Who knows?
Yeah. That I think the projected spot, if the Steelers do go after a quarterback, is the double up picks in the fourth round with 120 and 121. If they go after a quarterback, that's where they'll go. If they pass up that fourth round, no, there's nobody left on the books late that's even really worth it. But that's where a guy like Milton or maybe a Spencer Rattler might be sitting at, based on what, or even a kid out of BYU who showed pretty good at the combine. So
is that Devin Leary? Or okay. So Devin Leary was the one who caught my eye because, I mean, that dude's got an arm. He really does, and didn't have a lot of exposure in college because of where he played. So I think he's a guy who teams will be like, "Ooh, we see some potential there. He can spin it. Let's see what we can do with that." So this is a tough one because when you're talking about more likely, the Steelers, I think center's way up there on their priority list. If they don't make a trade up in round 1, you might see a trade up in round 2 to go get a guy like Zach Frazier who could go early in the second round. That might be where their moves start happening. So I think it's very likely that the Steelers draft a center with one of their first 3 picks or so. All right, let's see here. We got Joseph. I'm not even going to try that, Joseph. I apologize, man. That last
I can't get. I butcher names, so I'm not even going to try.
You know what? We'll save you and ourselves the dignity of not trying to pronounce your last name, Joseph. But thank you for your question. Do you think it's better to draft a generational center? I'm assuming that's what that is being said there. Generational center or a generational tackle? What do you think, Big G?
I don't know if the Steelers at 20 can get a generational tackle, but at 20 they could get a generational center, either in Powers Johnson and or Zach Frazier. So the value at 20 for center would be higher based on a tackle, because guys like J.C. Latham, Mims, those are the guys that's going to be available at 20.
Yeah. Are you in on Graham Barton at all at center, or are you wanting somebody else?
Yeah, I am. I think that he would be – I think him and Van Pam would be second to maybe even third round picks that you could get. Based on their numbers and their measurables, they're almost the same as these other guys. But when you actually start putting on the tape and look, that's where you get Powers Johnson jumps off the screen at you.
Yeah.
That's where Frazier jumps out the screen and you're like, holy crap, where this guy is a beast, so there's the difference,
Right. To me, Graham Barton to a team like the Eagles or the Dolphins, where they've got kind of multiple spots where they could use an upgrade, center, guard, tackle. I mean, he's played everything.
Yeah.
So to me, Graham Barton is probably a fit for a team like that. So think of the Eagles specifically. If Jason Kelce says, okay, I'm going to come back one more year, I'm going to try this one more time. Then Graham Barton, to me, playing guard 1 year and then moving over to center in 2025 after Kelce retires, that makes a ton of sense for a team like the Eagles to spend a little bit higher pick on him. But if I'm a team that needs a center, then I probably wouldn't prioritize him above JPJ, Zach Frazier, maybe even Cedric Van Pran. To me, I think Van Pran's underrated in this class at center. But yes, I agree with your answer to this question. I think you're going to draft a generational center if you pick one of these two positions at 20. If you're trying to get a generational guy, a future All-Pro Hall of Fame type guy, you're going to go for the center over the tackle. There's good tackles. I don't know if there's future Hall of Fame tackles in this group, especially at 20.
maybe two, but not at 20. Not at 20.
Yeah, those guys are going early. Joe Alt's going early. Fashanu's going early. Fatanu is going early. Those guys are going early. So All righty. Let's do from Dennis Povlak. I'm going to say Povlak. Who do you release or restructure to get more cap space besides Robinson and Peterson? Those are two guys on my radar. I'm surprised Robinson hasn't been cut yet, personally, based on what we've seen already. But we'll see. I think that's probably coming very shortly, and the Steelers will make that move. But anybody else stand out to you as a restructure or release there, Big G, so the Steelers can make some moves?
We got to restructure Cam. I mean, I love Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward should retire as a Steeler. He's one of our all-time greats, but the money just doesn't work, man, based on his production. So we got to push it down the line, dead cap, all the little different things that they can do to push his money out. But yeah, he needs to get restructured ASAP, as far as I'm concerned,
And I think that would have to come in the form of an extension, actually, because he's going into the last year of his deal. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Pop on another year of actual pay and then a couple void years. That makes a lot of sense to see where he's at after 2024. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I look at a guy like maybe a dark horse cut candidate, Larry Ogunjobi, because of the injury concerns. He didn't quite play up to snuff last year. Yeah. He could be a guy. I know they're going to be thin at DT, so that would be it. They'd have to have somebody in mind that they're bringing in to replace him. Yeah. Because I think they believe Benton's the real deal. I think they believe he's their next Cam Hayward, honestly. And I wouldn't be surprised if defensive tackle's a position they draft early in this class. Linebacker, there's going to be a lot of chitter chatter about all of that once draft day comes around for the Steelers. But anybody else saying out? Or
if Patrick Peterson doesn't get it worked out right, I think he could get flat out cut. And a lot of that's going to depend on what's going on with Corey Trice and with the other kid. What's the other kid? Rush. With Rush.
Yeah, Darius Rush. Yep.
Yeah. So if Darius Rush and Corey Trice are healthy and ready to go, I mean, Patrick Peterson, we ain't paying all that bread to you, bro. So if it's we have to have what I call come to Jesus moment. Your money's got to go down, or you're not going to be on the Steelers team. I think he wants to stay with the Steelers, so I look for his money to get chopped up too.
Yeah, and I think he's made a lot of money, and not going to say don't go after that paycheck, because make your money while you can. Absolutely, but maybe he just wants to. Maybe he sees what they're trying to build in Pittsburgh. Maybe he wants to be a part of that and chase the championship in one of his final years. Maybe that's what he wants to try to do. So we'll see how that plays out. There's probably going to be a surprise in there somewhere based on the additions that they make, free agency, and the draft. But the good news is they've got plenty of time to make this happen. And again, I trust Omar Khan, trust these guys to make it happen. Maybe more so than some fans do. Mike Tomlin, I trust him to make it work as well with the players he's got. So these make a lot of sense to me. Let's see. Let's talk about. Oh, here we go. This is a great question from Vinny Aguakun. Why can't we get it right at inside linebacker? It's been a revolving door since Shazier went down in 2017. I say it every single episode of every show I do. The Steelers are never right on defense unless they have that dude at inside linebacker. They're never quite right. And I know they can be good. They can be, they can be a fun defense, a good defense, a solid defense. But until you get that field general at linebacker in this type of defense, in a 3-4 defense, it just something's missing, and they have been missing it. So there's some guys that kind of fit that mold potentially in this draft class. Is that something that you're prioritizing if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers?
If I'm Pittsburgh, Wilson's got to be a part of the conversation.
Okay.
So listen, so I've already called it, and I'm going to keep on saying it. Peyton Wilson is better than Jack Campbell. I've watched the tape. Okay. I watched the film. I watched what he did on the combine floor. I saw how he performed. He's better than Jack Campbell. I thought the Steelers should have been aggressive to go after Jack Campbell last year. He was a guy that I circled and put dots beside. He's the only guy that the Steelers didn't get that I wanted. And I think that Jack Campbell would have solved it last year. So guess what? If we don't address it in free agency this year, let's go get Wilson. Because the Steelers, this is the deal, bro. And you're head on with this. Nose tackle, middle line, or one of the two middle linebackers, and safety. Yeah. Casey Hampton, James Ferrier, Troy Polamalu. That's how it works. In the 3-4 way that we play. Yes.
The spine of that defense. Yep.
Right. So you got to get those 3 spots solved. And Wilson will solve one of them. Wilson's a monster, yo. I'm trying to just go back and watch the all-22 film on him. You're going to be like, holy crap. Where can we get this guy signed today?
Right. And, a lot of people knock watching highlights, and I get that because you do want to see where they struggle with stuff. But I'm telling you what, Peyton Wilson's highlights are all pro level highlights. I mean, they are. I mean, he could have played linebacker this year in the NFL and been a top linebacker with those highlights. So when you're looking at floors and ceilings, a ceiling for a guy like that at that level, if that's what he puts it together for as a career, then you're talking about a guy who is the next Fred Warner type player. He's a franchise altering defender because he can do so many things. Now, let me ask you this about Peyton Wilson. Are the Steelers so burned by injuries at inside linebacker that they won't touch Peyton Wilson?
That's always the factor, especially when you have years after years after years with the same issues, at the same position or same issues. So yes, but see, this is where draft evaluation comes into play, bro. Those guys, the team did what they were supposed to do. So anything that they need to know medically, they done figured it out. So I'm gonna be real interested in once I get my little inside intel about how they set their draft board. So if Wilson's name is in those top one or two guys, then they ain't work. There's no injury concern at all, or how the other 32 teams set their draft board. Because I think Wilson's gonna go real high.
Sure. Yeah, I think he's a first round pick. I really do. I think somebody's going to take him in the first round. And maybe 2 weeks ago, he was a second or a third round pick 2 weeks ago, probably. But
he's always been a top 50, but I think he's rose in the top 30 now, in my opinion.
Well, and you're going to get a team that, especially in the back end of the draft, who, Baltimore as an idea, they're going to lose Patrick Queen. They're going to need a replacement for Patrick Queen. Roquan Smith, he's going to be up for a contract next year, I think, as well. So that is a position that they don't go into a season without two viable inside linebackers. That's just how they do business. I can see that range, right? That range, the back end, a contender who's got a lot of pieces already figured out. They just need that playmaker or that guy who sets them apart somewhere. He's the kind of guy that I feel could do that. And it was a good sign that all the MRIs checked out. The doctors gave him a clean bill coming out of the combine. So that'll make sense, or that'll make its way to teams as well and be a big deal for them there. So okay, here we go. Let's make this our final question here, because I think it's a good one. And I have some thoughts on this one from Vinny again. Do we get a strong safety in the draft or free agency? And I'll tell you what, I think that this free agent safety group is really good. I think it's really good this year. And it may not be a superstar, but I think there are plenty of guys that you can bring in on this defense to allow Minka to go back to being Minka and not having to play 10 positions on defense because there's 10 guys who don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So I think that you can get some guys up in the box in this free agency class. I would say that they're probably going to go cheap free agency route because they're not going to be big contracts for the strong safeties as well, rather than addressing it in the draft where I think, fringe positions of need like wide receiver, defensive tackle, and inside linebacker are going to be areas where they probably take precedent and want to get a guy locked in for 4 years on a rookie deal. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to be honest, man. I know a few years ago, I was pounding the table for Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota. I was pounding the table for him. I was like, we got to get this kid. This kid is like a mix between Bob Sanders and Troy Polamalu. He makes our defense beastly. Well, guess what? Minnesota's got another kid. And I'm pounding the table for my first or second round draft pick. I want Nubin. Nubin is a playmaker, you guys. He had 13 interceptions at University of Minnesota last season, and he played on a trash team. So, the defense kept them in the game. He was out there making all kind of plays. And what makes him so special is he can line up on that slot wide receiver. Yeah. He could take that slot wide receiver away. Like I dare you to throw the ball to him. So that's why I like him, because he's good in cover 2, which we play a lot of, cover 2 and cover 3. But man, and that he can take that slot receiver away. Oh my goodness. And he can rush the quarterback, so that's why I like Nubin, man.
I don't think I've seen a safety come out the last few years where their tight end coverage film has been better than Nubin's.
Yeah.
When those tight ends flank out into the slot against them, it is an erasure of those guys. They're gone.
Yep.
I mean, he
That's
just
big
erases.
facts.
Yeah,
Big facts.
hey, I love it. He erases those guys. And
Mhm.
If the Steelers have been bitten by anything, again, especially against bad teams, what is it about these bad teams with move tight ends that beat the Steelers because they can't cover the tight end?
Yeah.
That the Cardinals and the Patriots did that to the Steelers this last year. So
Mhm.
yeah, a guy like that solves a lot of problems. My guy in this draft, and I'm not saying that the Steelers should draft him, but my favorite player in this draft is Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, and I think he's the same type of guy. He's the same type of guy. Play multiple positions, get down in the slot against tight ends, and it's over. he's just good down there. So yeah. Hey, any final things, Big G, before we head out here? It's been a fun show. We answered a lot of questions. We talked a lot of rumblings. Anything final before we head out?
No, man, I appreciate the opportunity to come on the Q&A, man. You can give me any time on here, man, because it's Steeler-centric, and I love Pittsburgh Steeler talk, especially when you talk about player evaluation, draft, and everything else. And, man, thank you for watching and follow me on any of the Steel Curtain Network shows that I'm on, the Homies, the Pump Your Brakes podcast, the Homies Overtime. Man, you guys can check me always on Steel Curtain Network.
Absolutely. And, hey, before we go, I do got to bring this up because it's a super chat, and we appreciate you, Dennis, for your $2 donation here.
The quad father.
There you go. Yep. And bring back Edmonds or draft Newman. Problem solved. Absolutely. We talked about that. We appreciate your input there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Definitely give Big G a follow. Check out all his work on Steel Curtain Network and beyond. Lots of great stuff from Big G and company on all the shows that they do. So that's going to do it for us here on the Steelers Q&A. We're going to have so much news, so many notes, so many shows coming out for you. And don't forget to check out the website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, to get a lot of the written material that we're putting out. It's fantastic stuff. Everybody puts in the work in these articles. They're putting in the research in these articles. We got some new writers, some new visions and ideas out there. Check it all out. steelcurtainnetwork.com, fansfirstsports.com. We are your one-stop shop for all things NFL and all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Big G, so long, man. We'll have you on again soon, all right?
Appreciate it, bro. Make sure y'all get them algorithms and get my man's show going. We appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. You guys all have a fantastic Sunday night and a good work week ahead. We'll talk to you next week.